here on G4G, and today we're taking a look at the news that's coming out about Overwatch 2. For the lesser informed, Overwatch 2 is the second Overwatch game by Blizzard since its creation back in 2016. Overwatch 1 existed for several years until it was transitioned into Overwatch 2. Overwatch 1 was actually the charred and smoky remains from a game called Titan that was scrapped, and eventually some of the aspects of Titan went on to World of Warcraft, and the strictly PvP slash match, competitive, however you want to call it, quick play, that would go on to become Overwatch 1. Overwatch, when it was called Titan, had a certain almost MMO appeal to it. By day, you ran around and did city stuff, sort of. There was maybe even going to be quests. It was kind of MMO based. And at night, that's when you had the first person shooter competitive elements for it and everything. Well, the whole day-to-day Shenmue kind of thing from Titan wound up disappearing, and of course the only thing that we had from Overwatch 1 was the competitive stuff. Now, of course, there was arcade mode and limited time events like Lucio Ball during the summer, which was originally tied to the 2016 Summer Games. You had the PVE events, like where you were going through the events of Havana, the Junkenstein's Revenge stuff that would always come out around Halloween. You had those elements, but they were usually few and far between, and they tended not to make as big of an impact as competitive Overwatch and quick play Overwatch, or not even the professional competitive Overwatch scene, but simply ranked play within Overwatch. Well, when Overwatch 2 was being announced, and it was going to state that it was taking over Overwatch 1 and essentially going to kind of kill it off, similar to how when Warcraft 3 got remastered and it killed off the original Warcraft 3 and then was actually a massive bomb. It was a huge failure on Blizzard's part that caused a lot of heat within the community. I had pre-ordered the remastered Warcraft 3, got the mount in World of Warcraft, and based on how terrible it released, we got some thunder going on over here. Based on how terrible it was when it released, I refunded my money and unfortunately lost the mount, which I thought kind of sucked. It felt like Blizzard was not taking their just desserts on that one. I mean, I don't think anybody would really pre-order just to steal a mount and say, I want my money back, and then accept to keep the mount, especially when it was such a public debacle for Blizzard at the time. Honestly, just community faith would have been like, yeah, keep the mount. This one's on us. But okay, whatever. Didn't happen. So, a whole bunch of stuff came out about Overwatch 2 today that is actually kind of conflicting in whether or not you feel it's positive or negative. So the roadmap showed up for Overwatch 2, which says Season 5 is going to have Quest Watch, Mischief and Magic, and boy does this graphic not look like the banner of a free-to-play microtransaction game on the Android store or something. This Mischief and Magic font and its cartoony nature, I would have maybe gone with something better over here. I mean, this really looks like a Facebook game or something. A cinematic reveal, Summer Games is coming back, a 5v5 mini-comp season on Fire returns, Creator Workshop mode. Season 6 is going to be huge, and we'll touch on this in just a few minutes. There's going to be a new support hero, a flashpoint, hero mastery, firing range, player progression system. That's interesting. Overwatch anniversary and more. And then Season 7 and beyond is a new tank hero, new collaboration event, limited time mode, new control map, new winter event, new hero mastery missions, multiplayer, Roadhog rework, fan favorite modes return, cinematic debuts, competitive mystery heroes returns, lore codex, and a Sombra rework. I don't know how you announce these reworks so far out, especially since Sombra has been reworked recently. I mean, she's already had one pass. I don't know what they would do with her again. And Roadhog, I can't really imagine what needs to be done with him. He seems to be fairly well balanced at the time. I don't really see complaints. I don't really see a lot of love. He just simply exists. Whereas I've always stated when I've dealt with Overwatch on this channel that I feel now, especially when you don't have two tanks and you just have one, that the tank should generally be as beefy and protective and defensive and tanky as possible. It's why I like to play Ramatra and Orisa. It just depends on what I believe the map's objectives are. I will sometimes dip into Diva. I haven't monkeyed in a while. I almost never Reinhardt. However, he certainly is the best tank that fits the bill that I'm talking about. However, Junker Queen really grows on me. When I play Junker Queen, I feel like I have amazing matches with her. I mean, my Ramatra gets more plays of the game as a tank than I think I've ever seen in my career, and also does buckets of damage. But my Junker Queen is really, really fun, and I think I like her more on CP maps than, say, push, because I believe having some kind of shielding or the ability to kind of get in there and soak a bit is more what I believe a tank should do. However, in discussions with my girlfriend, it is her stance that the tank is more of the initiator in Overwatch 2 than previously, that the tank goes in, is kind of a short, like a shot caller, and goes in there and does disruption while setting the healers up to heal and the DPS to do their job. And Junker Queen definitely fits that bill. She's a very big initiator, disruption with throwing out the knife and pulling it back and juggling people, the bleeds, and her ultimate, I've seen score, at least when I play her, tons of kills in the background. Even if she doesn't do the direct kill, she sets the team up for kills. So, yeah, this is going to be interesting, especially Season 6. However, the conflicting news begins where, thanks to the dev chat, the original PvE vision from the 2019 BlizzCon is no more. The talent trees got scrapped. There will be no standalone version. The little bits of PvE that we saw at the time, such as the missions and the stories released with each PvP season as part of their live service, is the only thing that they're doing. Pour one out. It really feels like at this point we are getting the World of Warcraft Warlords of Draenor treatment over here, where so much is scrapped and raid tiers are scrapped. So, CarQ says, I'm not a dev, but I know tons of ideas and products get scrapped behind the scenes. The problem was this was a big part of their public announcement. If you overpromise and underdeliver, people are understandably going to get extremely upset. Ratio is very solid for that tweet. I know it wasn't an easy decision for the team. It just sucks. I don't think they have enough resources to get it out in time. As Aaron, one of the devs, have said, without a definitive end date in sight, that was the problem. Now the business strategy is always to prioritize the live service game portion of it. To be clear, there's still going to be small PvE. It's just going to be packaged differently, similar to the original Overwatch 1 PvEs. Time to say goodbye to these talent trees, which looked amazing back then. I mean, here were these trees for Reinhardt, which looks a lot like Marvel Heroes' trees from way back when, prior to it being called Marvel Omega. This looks very specifically like Marvel Heroes. Crusader, Juggernaut and Guardian. I mean, that one looks like it's shield related over there, potentially health. Crusader, it sort of looks like shield again. Juggernaut, I can see some damage things over here, like his fire strike, the slam with the slice right over there. Yeah, it's going to be really sad. And as people are bringing out, like, what was the entire delay for? We spent multiple years waiting for Overwatch 2 just to get Overwatch 1 with pay skins. And this thread goes on to talk about bait and switch that commonly happens with Blizzard. Wasn't this the point of making Overwatch 2? Dog, just take Overwatch 2 to the back and shoot it. Old Yellering the thing. Scammed, borderline misrepresentation. Why are you surprised? It was the main selling point for Overwatch 2. This is how I convinced my buddies to start again. Well, a interview happened, and GameSpot talks about it, that happened with two of the devs. Game director Aaron Keller and the producer Jared Noose discuss why the eagerly anticipated mode will no longer be released. When a sequel to Overwatch was announced at BlizzCon 2019, where the game was also playable, it had the big promise of PvE, a hero component that would allow players to gather squads, play through narrative-driven multiplayer experiences, and there would be progression and new talents. It was ambitious, and it was really the main justification for having 2 at the end of the title. If all this sounds familiar, that is because it is very similar to Battleborn, which was the game, along with, and we can argue this point, but it's still a viable sentence to say, Battleborn, along with Paladins to some degree, and Gigantic, Overwatch kind of became the juggernaut that just really dragged its nutsack across those games. Even Cliffy B's Lawbreakers had trouble going up against Overwatch, and I go back to competitive UT99, 2K3, 2K4. I interact with Cliffy on Twitter a bunch and everything. We're both here in Raleigh and whatnot. I like Cliffy B tremendously, despite the fact that he had bad PR when it came to Lawbreakers. But to say that Overwatch did take left testicle, right testicle, and drag it across a swath of first-person shooters at the time was true. Blizzard had the massive rainstorm building outside my window. It had the media campaign at the time. It had the money. It had the commercials. It could do quite a bit that a lot of the others couldn't. And even Battleborn, being backed by 2K, couldn't compete. However, Battleborn, despite its somewhat MOBA-esque PvP components, had big story components. And many of the unlocks, including that one kind of detective-y, big broad-shouldered detective-y shotgun character who would later not be unlocked that way, you had to play through all the stories, I think, on a certain hard mode or whatever to unlock him. And Overwatch 2 was finally going to give us something like that, and now it's not. And me and several of my friends recently have said, when are we going to get this mode? We've sort of just kind of like woke up a little bit and stuck our heads above the sand and went, yeah, wait a minute, when the hell are we getting this PvE? And now we've discovered that we're not. So a link to this interview will be down in the description, of course. So it's fair to say that the experience you showed during that first Overwatch 2 reveal is not going to be the one that we're going to get at any point. Yeah, exactly. So we're definitely not doing the hero mode and the talents and the power progression. When did you realize you were not going to be able to execute it this way? Keller says, well, it was a process. In the years following the announcement of BlizzCon, a really large portion of our team working on the PvE... we had a large portion of the team working on the PvE side of it, and I think players of our live running game would feel that we eventually stopped making content for it. It's been maybe 2.5 years since the last hero that we launched, and we don't want to be back at that point where it's 3.5 years since launching a PvP map. So we really looked hard at what we were doing on the live service side and said, yeah, we want to work on it better. So they sort of went with the money by wrapping it up and saying, well, we think this is what the fans want. Well, the fans wanted the PvE too. They literally felt it was the justification for the Switch, aside from the removal of loot boxes and the more direct purchase of skins and everything. I think the scope of our hero missions, back with Keller, was really, really large. It was going to take finish. It was going to be pretty remarkable, a massive lift. You think about making a game that is supposed to be almost its own standalone co-op experience that people are going to be able to play as the main game. It's a lovely thunderstorm. Can't wait to enjoy it. But even just a small piece of it, the talent trees, 40 to 50 talents per hero, 35 plus heroes. We're looking at thousands of talents to make. In reality, what we were looking at was running 2 separate games at the same time with a set of heroes that had a small connector piece that shared. Honestly, the interview is very large. Read it. A lot of people have said the the interviewer, Taimur Hussein, asked a lot of tough questions and pressed hard. This one over here, PvE was a big part of Overwatch 2, so people can think, well, those devs are going to get laid off or move somewhere else. What's the impact of not doing PvE anymore? And they're saying it's going to be building new enemy types. It's not going to have an adverse impact on the team. We aren't letting people go who were working on PvE. On the contrary, we're excited to bring them together with the rest of the folks for working on the events. This is a very rare look at the process where you tried something and then you realized it failed. I mean, I don't think it's that rare for Blizzard, to be honest. I mean, StarCraft Ghost with the Nova missions and everything, and Heroes of the Storm, which got backburnered. I don't know. I think there's more things that failed at Blizzard than he was giving it credit for. I'm not saying it's Google Graveyard, which Stadia just recently added to that, but it's rough. And unfortunately, one of the things that could have taken the place of what was fun in Battleborn, those story missions, is gone. And there were a lot of people who, aside from just playing Overwatch 1 and 2, they liked the lore of Overwatch, what the characters did when they were Talon, and people who faded in and out of Talon and Overwatch, and who was good, quote unquote, and who was bad, quote unquote, and their backstories, and whether things were ham-handed in the storytelling, whether swerves happened that the community didn't like something that happened to Soldier 76. Their animations told stories, admittedly, and were always top-notch and really cool. The Sombra one that always gets me is with Reaper going, Sombra the door. I always thought that one was good. And I mean, they do almost Pixar levels of animations and everything. I mean, go back and look at the Hanzo Genshi one. That one was really, really good. But yeah, unfortunately, we don't get the PvE component the way we had wanted to and everything. So good news and bad news today for Overwatch 2 and everything. Were you one of the PvE interested people or not? Let me know down in the comments, and let me know what you think about the quote-unquote good news, like Season 6 being huge, and the bad news of we're never going to get the PvE component that we were so hyped about from BlizzCon 2019. Thanks a lot.